It's that time again as Iron Country brings you the Fishin Hole. Keep up to date with the latest products and learn fishing tactics from some of the best anglers across North America.
Let's give him a warm welcome this morning to the Fishin Hole 2014 National Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame inductee Dale Stroschein. And this week's guest, we are going to introduce to you Larry Smith from Larry Smith Outdoors. We bring you another fantastic guest this week. It's legendary Al Linder on the Fishin Hole.
And my pleasure to be here, Jeff. Looking forward to it.
Here's your host, Hurricane Jerry.
Good morning, Hurricane Jerry with you for another exciting show. We are here to make you a better angler and, of course, here to help you catch a fish of a lifetime. You can stream the Fishin Hole anywhere in the world at ironcountry.fm or even take it with you on your mobile device just by downloading the free TuneIn radio app from your Google Play Store. The Fishin Hole is brought to you this morning by the Rock River Bait Box, located on the Rock River next to the Rock River in Fort Atkinson. The Rock River Bait Box is your ice fishing headquarters. They carry the biggest selection of ice tackle in the area. They are your home for the new Beaver Dam lighted tip-ups, Sullivan tip-downs, perfect for catching slab panfish on Lake Koshkonong. And don't forget about their huge selection of ice shelters, too, and apparel they have in stock. They also have fishing electronics from Vexilar, from the FL8 to the FL28. And if you're looking for a storage building, they are your home for old hickory utility buildings. And also on the topic of ice fishing, and I know I'm a huge fan of catching perch, especially I did a trip a few years ago in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and our next guest is really familiar with that territory, especially he used to guide there, and now he fishes all over the North America here in the ice belt, and we want to welcome Jason Mitchell to the show this morning. And Jason, welcome to the Fishin Hole.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, and definitely like to share your knowledge with especially perch anglers this morning. We are going to talk perch fishing here, and I know you are very familiar with Devil's Lake, and let's talk a little bit. I know on your social media page you were out on Cascade Reservoir out in Idaho. That is a bucket list for me. You want to talk maybe a little bit about that? I mean, some of the pictures you're posting is incredible. I mean, 2-pound perch. You want to tell us a little bit about that and how you guys got set up to go out on that trip there?
Yeah, it was a bucket list dream trip for us too. I mean, it's just something that we'd heard about, and it's just something that kept reoccurring. As far as just people catching really big perch, and and obviously we catch big perch out in the Dakotas. I mean, I've caught perch over 2 pounds before out in North Dakota and South Dakota, but that fish is a pretty uncommon fish. Especially with honest 2-pound fish. You put a scale on. I mean, 1.5 pound perch is a huge perch, and so I mean those fish are just giants. And so what was neat about Cascade, we were out there for 4 days, and so we just saw just a snapshot of what it's capable of. It took a little while to figure out the fish and to find the fish, but every day we caught, I would say, between 4 or 5 of us fishing, we caught, a handful of fish over 1.5 pounds, and we've caught, probably 1 to 2 fish over 2 pounds each day.
Wow.
Which, in the big scheme of things, I mean, that's a once-in-a-lifetime fish most places for most people, a lot of people can fish their whole lives and never see a perch like that. I mean, that's a special fish, and have that high of a chance of catching one, to me, was incredible. I mean, it was definitely something where we're going to be doing that. We're going to be back there next year for sure. I mean, it's a 20-hour drive from Devil's Lake, but it was worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's I've already I've had the Google my maps out, and I think it's like 23 or 24 hours. I think from southern Wisconsin in northern Illinois, where our location is here in Beloit, Wisconsin. But that's definitely a trip of a lifetime. I got to ask you, Jason, is what is the average size perch out there? I mean, for listeners that maybe are thinking about maybe a trip out there.
I wouldn't say it's a numbers thing where you're going to go out and fill your bucket and catch hundreds of fish. I mean, it's not a quantity situation. But, with that being said, we caught, I suppose, on per person that were 11 or maybe 10 to 12 inches.
Okay, all right.
Just nice jumbos for eating.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that there was everywhere you could drill the hole, you'd mark 2 to 3 feet of fish that were perch, but they're only 2 to 6 inches. Okay?
Oh, wow.
There's all kinds of these little perch everywhere. They're darting in and darting out, and they're so small they can't even hit your bait. Unless you drop down to like a teardrop or something, you could probably catch them. But there's little perch everywhere, and I think there's just a huge biomass of perch in the lake, but a certain percentage of them just get over the hump where they get big, and then they start eating all the little perch. And that's what was really fascinating to me about this, is that a lot of places I've been to where a 2-pound perch was a possibility, in a lot of cases those fish were eating invertebrates, like whether it's freshwater shrimp out in the North and South Dakota natural lakes, or like on Gigibik, those fish are
right.
The mayfly larva, and it's really a finesse bite. Even though you're catching, fishing for a big perch, you're using light tackle, light stuff, really a finesse presentation. Whereas these fish were predators. They were eating young of your perch, and so people were using, like I was using a salmon chubby darter. People were using ripping wraps, jigging wraps, spoons, and it felt more like we were walleye fishing than perch fishing, as far as fishing up off the bottom, making those fish chase it. And when those fish hit it, they hit it.
Yeah,
there's no finesse about it. So that to me was fun.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what was the bite like? Is it more like a walleye hitting your bait? And that's kind of what I've heard. Late ice on the Mississippi River too. You think it's the same scenario almost, like you just said. And it's like they get real aggressive and they just hammer that bait. And what type of rod were you using out there? I know I'm a big fan. I just purchased I think it's your dead meat rod. That you had?
That was actually the rod. Yeah, that was the rod I was using, and it worked great. There were some people that were using, stuff that was more like a light action walleye rod.
Right.
And, you could get away with a graphite rod. You didn't have to have a noodle tip. But what's interesting, too, you were talking about like the Mississippi River backwaters, and those, that's really trending up, too, for big perch. Or you look at like the big fish that, come out of Green Bay or Lake Michigan or Saginaw Bay. And something that's interesting to me, just in my travels, is when you have an ecosystem where perch are eating other fish or crayfish, they have big mouths and they're a lot more aggressive. Okay, and so you look at like a fish, like say a 14-inch perch out of Green Bay. Okay, that fish is going to have a mouth big enough, it's going to look like a bass.
Right.
How big the mouth is, right? I mean, and those fish can tear apart a 7-inch rusty crayfish to shreds. Okay, you get out on like the Gibik or even like the Dakotas, especially, and you might have a 14-inch perch that has a mouth the size of a pop bottle.
Yeah.
Their mouths are their heads are so small, and their mouths are so small, and those fish aren't aggressive. They're used to, eating something that has no eyes that can't swim away. And so that's really what's interesting about perch too, is their bodies almost adapt to what the forage is and where they're living. And so those fish out on Cascade, they were predators. They were cannibalistic.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
That's the thing here, closer here to home here on the Madison chain. We've got Lake Mendota, known for their perch, actually the whole chain itself, and it's more of a finesse thing where, they're more light biters and they can be really finicky, and it can be just the lightest little tap. And
well, they're eating water fleas.
Yeah.
Think about how easy a water flea is to catch and eat, compared to, say, a spot-tailed shiner, or, for a fish that's living in the Mississippi River backwaters, or for, fish living on Saginaw Bay or Green Bay. Like you look at like Saginaw Bay, where, people might be fishing over shallow 4 to 5 foot sand flats, jigging just like the Russian spoons with no bait on it, where you're just ripping it to the bottom of the ice, letting it fall back, ripping it, letting it fall back. And how aggressive that fish is compared to, say, a fish that's, suspended in the water column over Mendota eating water fleas.
Right.
Completely different feeding patterns. So that's what makes fishing fun, is going to these different places and, and experiencing some of those differences. So.
Yeah, have you noticed too, Jason, fishing for perch, they may, let's use the Dakotas, is there a plastic bite out there, or is it more live bait, or is it all kind of depending on the mood of the fish?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, there are plastic bites. I mean, especially in shallow water. I've had really good success, especially in some of the South Dakota lakes, using like a horizontal tungsten jig with some of the bigger soft plastics, especially that look like a mayfly larva or a dragonfly larva. something, or like a caddisfly larva, something that was a little bit bigger and longer, and had excellent success with that. Even like in Minnesota, I've had excellent success with soft plastics that look like a bloodworm, okay? But one thing I can tell you about Devil's Lake, for example, is that a lot of times we're fishing really deep water. And so we might be fishing, say, 30 feet or deeper. And it seems like when you're fishing that deep water, plastics become a lot less effective. And I think the reason being, just from some of the bright enough days where I've been able to watch those deep fish on an underwater camera, is a perch swims up to it, sucks it in, it's got to coast forward, and when it coasts forward, that's when you get that dunk in your line. That's when you get that spring bobber to dip.
Right.
Okay? And they have to coast forward quite a ways, a surprising distance in 40 feet of water before you get that dunk. Okay, if they just suck and spit, you don't even know those fish are doing that in that depth of water. Okay, and so on a soft plastic, it's hard to get a fish to suck it and coast a foot to 15 inches forward and keep it in their mouth without dropping it. Whereas if you have wax worms gopped up on it, they hold it and run with it a lot longer. Okay, that's my theory, because we've tried soft plastics on Devil's Lake a lot, and it hasn't been as effective for us. There's been times where on a really ripping hot torrid bite, you can catch them on that, but to be fair, you can catch fish on anything when they're on. Okay, it's the average day with what the fish are usually doing is kind of where the rubber hits the road, and so most days, we're doing better with live bait. But yeah, you get and every situation is different. There's some lakes that just the fish are more aggressive. There's more fish. They're competing against each other. That's a big part of it. Whereas you have a competition where you have a lot of fish and not quite enough to eat. That's really where soft plastics shine. But if you have low densities of fish, like for example, we'll have sloughs out here where there's not a lot of fish and there's a huge amount of invertebrates because the water's been bumping up a few feet every year. And those fish, that lake will have a tough reputation where, it's a camera lake where you have to use an underwater camera because it's like brain surgery getting those fish to bite. And when they do bite, they don't hold it very long and they're not competing against other fish. Whereas that lake will drop 3 feet, and all of a sudden there's more fish in the lake, and they're in a smaller area, more compact, and they're more competitive. And that same lake will completely change personality just in a year or two, just depending on how many fish are in an acre and how much food there is, if that makes any sense. So
yep.
We see changes in that all the time. Don't ever say always or never with fishing. You gotta just kind of be open-minded and kind of react and adapt.
Wow, you've recently you've had your trip to Cascade Reservoir there in Idaho, and now you just finished up fishing the Bay of Green Bay. Anybody been following you on social media? You caught 11 to 12-pound walleye on a tip-up, and according to your social media post, that's probably one of your biggest walleyes I see you caught too on a tip-up.
Yeah, I've caught bigger fish, just jigging, and obviously I've caught bigger fish in the spring and the fall, and we never weighed it. We measured it on a bump board. It was legit 30-inch fish right on the nose. It was such a heavy, full, stocky fish. The fish just had the girth, and so we guessed it at 11 to 12 pounds because we guy that I was with had weighed some fish that were 28, 29-inch fish, 27-inch fish that were actually hitting the 10-pound mark. And so it was a special fish. But yeah, I think that's the biggest walleye that I've ever caught on a tip-up. I've caught a lot of walleyes, and I've caught a lot of walleyes in that 10-pound range. I think the biggest one I've caught is close, right around that 13-pound range.
Right.
I've caught some big ones up on Lake Winnipeg. I've caught some big ones on the Missouri River. On Devil's Lake, I think I'm right around 10.5, 11 pounds. We don't get a lot of fish over 11 pounds on Devil's Lake, but that was a neat fish.
That's
cool, and just beautiful colors. It was just a gorgeous fish.
Yeah, what we call them here in Wisconsin, Green Bay Gold. So.
It was a Green Bay Gold, all right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Jason, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and always look forward to talking to you. And hopefully, we'll definitely get you back on the show again, and maybe we'll talk another species besides perch. And by the way, before I let you go here, you're going to get a chance to fish the Bay of Green Bay for the walleye run at all. Have you got time to do that this year?
I sure hope so. I love that fishing over there. I love fish. We filmed on the Peshtigo a couple, I think 2 springs ago. And the other thing I'd love to do is try to get over and do some of the steelhead fishing in the tributaries. That's really exotic and cool. It's something we don't get to do at home. And so, I love it over there. I love that Green Bay area. That's a cool spot. Cool place.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you get back